A 5-year-old girl walks across a yard on a warm June afternoon. Her small hands are still dirty, from planting flowers with her grandmother. She smells like summer soil and sunshine. Her mother watches from 20 feet away as the little girl opens the kitchen door and steps inside to join her brothers. 2 minutes later, she's gone. Not lost, not hiding. Gone. Vanished from a house where 4 other people were present. Disappeared in the time it takes to help someone adjust a knee brace. Gone in 120 seconds. Her name is Summer Moon Utah Wells. And 4 years later, no one knows what happened in those 2 minutes. This is one of Tennessee's longest-running missing child investigations, a case that has consumed more than 6,500 tips, searched over 3,000 acres of mountain terrain, and mobilized more than 100 law enforcement agencies. A case with no arrests, no named suspects, no conclusive evidence. Tonight, we examine what investigators know, what they don't know, and why a little girl's disappearance from her own home remains one of the most baffling cases in modern American history. I'm your host at The Untold Cold Case, and this is the story of Summer Wells. If you're passionate about seeking justice for the forgotten and the missing, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This case needs your attention. Let's bring Summer home. Summer Moon Utah Wells was born on February 4, 2016, in Hawkins County, Tennessee. By the time she turned 5, she was living with her parents and 3 older brothers in the remote Beach Creek community near Rogersville. This is isolated country. Dense forest canopy, steep inclines, spotty cell phone reception. The kind of place where neighbors are separated by acres of woodland, where wildlife outnumbers people, and where a child could disappear into the landscape and never be found. By all accounts, Summer was a happy little girl. Blonde hair that caught the light, blue eyes that sparkled with life and innocence. At 3 feet tall and roughly 40 pounds, she was petite for her age. She loved playing outside with her brothers, running through the grass, exploring the world the way 5-year-olds do. And on that June day, she loved helping her mother plant flowers. It was an ordinary Tuesday afternoon in rural Tennessee, the kind of day that blends into memory, unremarkable and peaceful, until it wasn't. June 15, 2021, 5:30 in the afternoon. According to her mother, Candace Bly's account to investigators, the day began like many summer afternoons at the Wells home. Summer was outside with her mother and maternal grandmother, enjoying the warmth of the season. The 3 were planting flowers together in pots near a camper that sat approximately 20 feet from the main house. Summer was excited about the flowers, chatting, laughing, asking questions, doing what 5-year-olds do when they're given a task that makes them feel helpful and grown up. After finishing with the flowers, they went inside to wash their hands. The soil came off under the running water, circling the drain. Summer's grandmother gave her a piece of candy as a reward for being such a good helper. Summer accepted the candy with delight, then asked her mother if she could go see her brothers. Her 3 brothers were inside the house at the kitchen table, watching videos together on a device, absorbed in whatever was on the screen. Candace said yes. She walked Summer partway across the yard, roughly halfway between the camper and the house. From there, she could see the kitchen door clearly. Nothing obstructed her view. She watched as Summer walked the remaining distance on her own. A small figure in a pink shirt and gray shorts pulled open the door and stepped inside. Before returning to help her mother with a knee brace, Candace called out to her sons, "Watch. Summer." The boys acknowledged her. They'd heard their mother. They knew their little sister was coming inside. Summer was now in the house with her brothers. Her mother could see the house from the camper doorway. Everything seemed normal. Everything seemed safe. Approximately 2 minutes passed. 120 seconds. The time it takes to walk across a room. The time it takes to help someone adjust a medical brace. The time it takes to glance away from your children and assume they're safe because they're right there, just a few yards away, in your own home. When Candace returned to check on Summer, she found her 3 sons still at the kitchen table, still watching their videos. "Where's Summer?" she asked. Her sons looked up from their screens. "She went downstairs," they said. "To the basement." The Wells home had a basement playroom where the children often played with toys, games, the accumulated treasures of childhood. Candace called down the stairs. "Summer. Summer, baby. Come here." No response. The house remained quiet. No footsteps on the stairs. No small voice answering. Candace called again, louder this time, with concern creeping into her voice like ice water. "Summer." Nothing. This was unusual. As Candace would later tell investigators, "She always answers me." Summer was described as an obedient child, responsive to her mother's voice. When her mother called, Summer responded. That was their pattern. That was normal. The basement door stood open. Candace descended into the basement, her concern growing with each step. The playroom was empty. No Summer playing with toys. No Summer hiding behind furniture. No Summer at all. She searched the basement thoroughly, looking in corners, behind boxes, anywhere a 5-year-old might be. She searched the ground floor, calling Summer's name. She went back outside and searched around the camper, around the flower pots they'd just been working with, around the outbuildings on the property. She called Summer's name over and over, her voice growing more desperate with each unanswered cry. The panic was setting in now. The terrible realization that something was wrong. Summer was nowhere. At approximately 6:30 in the evening, Candace Bly called the Hawkins County Sheriff's Office to report her daughter missing. Her voice on that call carried the unmistakable sound of a mother in crisis. Emergency scanner audio from that evening captured the initial dispatch. But there's a detail worth noting, a detail that would become significant. The initial report stated the mother had gone for a walk and came home to find Summer missing. According to Candace's later detailed account to investigators, she never left the property. She could see the house from the camper doorway the entire time. This discrepancy in the very first report would become one of many small inconsistencies that would fuel speculation in the months and years to come. Was it simply miscommunication in a crisis moment? Was it a dispatcher error? Or was it something else? But in that moment, there was only the immediate, desperate reality. A 5-year-old girl was missing from her home. Don Wells, Summer's father, was at work when his wife called in a panic. He raced home, fear and confusion flooding his mind. When he arrived at Ben Hill Road, emergency responders were already mobilizing. Vehicles with flashing lights, personnel gathering equipment, the machinery of emergency response kicking into gear. The massive search for Summer Wells was about to begin. Before we continue with what happened next in this investigation, please take a moment to like this video. It helps more people learn about Summer's case. Every share, every comment, every bit of engagement keeps her story alive and increases the chances someone with information will come forward. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation issued an endangered child alert that very evening, June 15th, within hours of the initial report. By the next day, that alert was upgraded to a statewide Amber Alert. An Amber Alert is reserved for cases where law enforcement believes a child has been taken and is in imminent danger. The rapid escalation suggested investigators believed Summer's disappearance was not simply a case of a child wandering off into the woods. Something about this case immediately struck them as outside normal parameters. The alert broadcast across Tennessee. A 5-year-old girl, 3 feet tall, 40 pounds, blonde hair, blue eyes, last seen wearing a pink shirt and gray shorts, missing from Hawkins County. The question everyone was asking: how does a 5-year-old girl vanish from her own home with multiple family members present? Within days, the FBI's Child Abduction Rapid Deployment Team descended on the rural community. These are the Bureau's elite specialists in child abduction cases, the experts who've trained for exactly this scenario. The presence of this federal team sent a clear message. This case was a priority at the highest levels. But finding a missing child in the mountains of northeast Tennessee is extraordinarily challenging. The area surrounding the Wells property is dense with vegetation that grows thick and tangled in summer. Steep hills make travel dangerous even for experienced adults. Wildlife roams freely through the woods: bears, coyotes, snakes. And in June, the forest canopy is at its thickest, blocking aerial views and creating countless areas where someone or something could be hidden from sight. The search that followed would become one of the most extensive missing child searches in Tennessee history. For 13 days straight, the area became the site of an extraordinary mobilization. 1,150 ground searchers combing through the terrain, 13,800 hours logged by personnel on the ground, 3,000 acres of mountainous terrain covered, step by difficult step, 120 agencies participating from Tennessee, Virginia, North Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, and Ohio, state police, county sheriffs, volunteer rescue squads, all converging on this small community. 21 hours of aircraft surveillance, planes flying patterns overhead, 30 hours of helicopter searches, choppers hovering low over the forest canopy, dive teams searching every body of water in the vicinity, ponds, creeks, swimming holes, multiple canine tracking units, with their specially trained dogs. The numbers are staggering. The effort was monumental. Everyone involved understood the stakes. A 5-year-old girl's life hung in the balance. One of those tracking dogs picked up Summer's scent. The dog tracked from the house to the road. This was potentially significant. If Summer's scent led to the road, it suggested she had left the property on foot. And if a 5-year-old had reached the road alone, someone in a vehicle could have picked her up. Either someone who took advantage of an opportunity, or someone who had been waiting. But a scent trail is not conclusive evidence. Dogs are remarkable, but they're not infallible. Weather conditions affect scent. Time degrades it. And no other evidence corroborated the dog's alert. No witnesses saw a child on the road. No one reported seeing a vehicle stop. The Wells property itself underwent intense scrutiny. More than 11 documented searches over the course of the investigation. They searched every room, every closet, every space where a small body might be hidden. They searched every vehicle on the property. They searched every outbuilding, every shed, every structure. They brought in specialized dogs trained to detect human remains. They photographed everything, documenting every inch. They collected digital evidence from computers and devices. If there was evidence that something had happened to Summer in that house, investigators were determined to find it. But they found nothing conclusive. No physical evidence that indicated what had happened to Summer Wells in those 2 minutes. No blood. No signs of violence. No hidden spaces containing terrible secrets. By June 28th, 13 days after Summer disappeared, the massive ground search was scaled back. 3,000 acres had been searched thoroughly. Every viable lead had been followed to its conclusion. Every tip had been checked. Every theory had been explored. Summer was simply gone, as if she'd vanished into thin air. Tennessee Bureau of Investigation spokesperson Leslie Earhart addressed the media, and her words carried the weight of frustration and determination. There are few clues as to what happened to Summer, despite investigators doing everything within their power to find answers. She added something that would become the defining statement of this case. We've said from the beginning, this case is outside the norm. Outside the norm. In law enforcement terms, that's a significant admission. It means this case doesn't follow typical patterns that investigators are trained to recognize. The usual investigative approaches aren't yielding results. The playbook isn't working. Usually, there's evidence. Physical evidence. Witnesses. A clear timeline. Something that points investigators in a direction. In Summer's case, there was none of that. Just a 2-minute window and an empty house. If this case is affecting you like it's affecting millions of others, show your support by commenting below. Share your thoughts, your theories based on facts, and most importantly, keep Summer's name in the public consciousness. And don't forget to subscribe to The Untold Cold Case for more deep dives into cases that demand answers. In any missing child case, investigators must examine the people closest to the child first. This isn't prejudice. This isn't assumption. This is statistics and proper investigative procedure. The numbers are stark and sobering. When a child is harmed, it's most often by someone in the family or close to the family. Not strangers in vans. Not random predators lurking in bushes. family members, or people the family knows. From the very beginning, Don Wells and Candace Bly were under intense scrutiny. This is standard investigative practice, not because investigators assumed guilt, but because statistics and experience dictate this approach. Sheriff Ronnie Lawson of Hawkins County was direct with the media. Everybody is still a suspect. Person of interest, however you want to put it. Both Don Wells and Candace Bly agreed to sit for polygraph examinations, administered with FBI oversight. These weren't casual questionnaires. These were intensive examinations designed to detect deception. According to Sheriff Lawson, both parents passed their polygraphs. Now, polygraph results aren't perfect. They're not admissible in court for good reason. They can produce false positives and false negatives. But in investigative terms, when parents pass polygraphs in a missing child case, it suggests they're likely telling the truth as they know it. It doesn't prove innocence, but it's a significant data point. And yet, Sheriff Lawson maintained, everyone remains a person of interest. The tension between past polygraphs and still persons of interest encapsulates the frustration of this case. There's no evidence to charge the parents. There's also no evidence to completely rule them out. Investigators are stuck in a limbo of insufficient evidence, pointing in any direction. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation has never named any suspects. For 4 years, the investigation has proceeded without publicly identifying anyone as being under particular suspicion. No press conferences announcing arrests. No dramatically revealed persons of interest. Just silence and ongoing investigation. Who are Don Wells and Candace Bly? Don Wells is a man in his 50s who has lived most of his life in rural Tennessee and Utah. He works in construction and landscaping, physical labor that keeps food on the table. Don has a documented criminal history from the 1990s. Convictions for theft, burglary, and forgery in Utah. These are serious matters. Crimes committed decades ago when he was a younger man. More recently, in October 2020, just months before Summer disappeared, Don was arrested following an incident involving an altercation. He ultimately pleaded guilty to one charge, with other charges dismissed. Then, in October 2021, 4 months after Summer vanished, Don was arrested for driving under the influence. He served time in county detention in early 2022. When released, Don told reporters he couldn't find work in Tennessee. People recognized him from the constant media coverage. They harassed him. He described strangers appearing at job sites with accusations, making it impossible for him to work. Someone reportedly yelled accusations at Candace in a public place, turning a trip to the store into a nightmare. The family eventually moved to Arkansas, seeking anonymity and a fresh start away from the scrutiny. In interviews, Don Wells is emotional and steadfast in his belief that Summer was taken. He's repeated the same narrative for 4 years. He believes someone took his daughter, carried her through the wooded area behind the house to a waiting vehicle, and drove away with her. On the 4th anniversary of Summer's disappearance in June 2025, Don spoke to reporters. His words were haunting, the words of a father who has accepted terrible possibilities. I expect to see her eventually. I don't know about in this life. Candace Bly is in her mid-40s. She is Summer's mother and the last person known to have seen Summer, apart from Summer's 3 brothers. Her account of June 15th has remained consistent across multiple interviews. They were planting flowers together. She walked Summer partway to the house. She watched her go inside. She returned to help her mother with the knee brace. And 2 minutes later, Summer was gone. Candace has given multiple interviews to media outlets, sitting under bright lights, answering the same questions over and over. Critics point to small inconsistencies in her statements, minor details that change between tellings. Supporters argue she's a traumatized mother, being re-traumatized by constant questioning, and that memory naturally shifts under stress. In November 2021, 5 months after Summer vanished, Don and Candace appeared on a national television program. The format was intense, more interrogation than interview. At one point, Candace became upset and walked off the set, saying she felt interrogated rather than interviewed. The host concluded it seemed clear neither parent had directly harmed their daughter, but suggested Candace may know more than she consciously realizes, and predicted that when solved, the answer wouldn't involve a stranger. Candace has largely withdrawn from public view in recent years. She declined interview requests in 2025, stating through representatives that she still experiences difficult symptoms related to Summer's disappearance and the aftermath. The constant scrutiny has taken its toll. What about the brothers? Summer had 3 older brothers. On June 15th, those boys were at the kitchen table when their mother told them to watch Summer. They saw Summer enter the house. They said she went downstairs to the basement. The boys were interviewed by investigators multiple times, in careful sessions designed for child witnesses. What they said has never been made public, and rightly so. Children deserve protection from public scrutiny. Their statements should remain confidential unless they become evidence in a trial. In July 2021, 1 month after Summer disappeared, the Tennessee Department of Children's Services removed the 3 boys from Don and Candace's custody. This intervention requires evidence and a court order. The state doesn't remove children without cause. For 3 years, Don and Candace worked to regain custody. They jumped through whatever hoops the system required, but the boys remained in state care, placed with foster families or relatives. Then, in 2024, Don and Candace signed over their parental rights permanently. They gave up their sons. Don told media, "We didn't have a choice." What that means is unclear. Did they feel pressured? Did they believe it was best for the boys? Did they simply reach a point where they couldn't continue fighting? In June 2025, Don announced that the Child Services case had been dismissed, with court documents showing findings were unsubstantiated. Whatever concerns prompted the removal, they were not proven. After 4 years of investigation, Don and Candace Wells have never been charged with any offense related to Summer's disappearance. They have been suspects in the court of public opinion, but not in a court of law. By June 2024, 3 years after Summer vanished, investigators had received more than 6,500 tips related to Summer's case. 6,500. Let that number sink in. That's an extraordinary number for any case. But here's the challenge. Quantity doesn't equal quality. Tennessee Bureau of Investigation Assistant Director Josh Melton addressed this directly in public statements. The vast majority of tips relate to rumors and social media speculation rather than first-hand information. Think about what that means. Thousands of hours of investigative time have been spent chasing information that originated from online videos and theories. People who have never been to Hawkins County, who have never met the Wells family, who have no direct knowledge of anything related to Summer, are submitting tips based on amateur analysis of publicly available information. This is not helpful. In fact, officials say it actively hinders the investigation. Every tip must be followed up. Every lead must be checked. Investigators can't simply dismiss tips without investigation, because the one they dismiss might be the one that matters. So they follow up on tips from people who analyzed Candace's body language in a video, tips from people who have theories about the timeline, tips from people who think they've spotted Summer in photographs of other children, tips based on dreams, on psychic visions, on feelings. Resources are finite. Time spent chasing social media speculation is time not spent on legitimate investigative leads. The TBI has repeatedly urged the public: submit tips only if you have direct, specific, first-hand information, not tips based on videos you watched, not tips based on body language analysis, not tips based on feelings about the parents. If you didn't see something, hear something, or directly experience something relevant to Summer's disappearance, don't submit a tip. But buried among those 6,500 tips, there have been genuinely useful leads. Investigators won't say how many, but they acknowledge some tips have advanced the investigation. In November 2024, 3.5 years after Summer vanished, a joint operation descended on a property in Greenville, Tennessee. Tennessee Bureau of Investigation agents, sheriff's detectives, and FBI personnel conducted a search with warrants in hand. This wasn't casual follow-up. This wasn't checking a random tip. This was a coordinated multi-agency operation requiring warrants from a judge, planning, and resources. That kind of operation doesn't happen without substantial reason. The location was approximately 9 to 10 miles from the Wells property. If Summer had wandered off on foot, she couldn't have walked that distance through mountain terrain. It's simply not physically possible for a 5-year-old. So, if this search was related to Summer, it suggested investigators were following a lead involving someone transporting Summer away from her home. The TBI confirmed the search was related to an investigative lead in Summer's case, but declined to provide specifics about what prompted it or what was recovered. They didn't deny finding anything. They didn't confirm finding anything. Just professional silence. No arrests were made following the search. No charges filed. What does this tell us? First, the case is genuinely active. This wasn't theater for the public. This was real investigative work. Second, investigators had reason to believe something connected to Summer might be found at that location. Third, the investigation is considering scenarios beyond Summer simply wandering off into the woods. The red truck. Shortly after Summer disappeared, the TBI issued a public appeal. They were looking for information about a specific vehicle, a 1998 to 2000 maroon or red Toyota Tacoma pickup truck with a full bed ladder rack and white buckets in the bed. The description was very specific. Not just a red truck, a particular make, model, year range, and distinctive features. This truck had reportedly been seen near the intersection of Beach Creek Road and Ben Hill Road on June 14th or 15th, right around the time Summer disappeared. The appeal went viral. Suddenly, people across Tennessee were reporting sightings. Every red truck in the region became suspicious. Everyone with a neighbor who drove a red truck suddenly wondered if they knew something sinister. But in rural Tennessee, pickup trucks are everywhere. They're the default vehicle for rural life hauling tools, equipment, animals, supplies. The description was specific enough to be useful, but common enough to generate countless false leads. Despite hundreds of reported sightings flooding in from across the state, the driver of that red Toyota Tacoma was never identified. The TBI has never stated whether they confirmed the truck's presence at all, or whether the initial report was mistaken. The red truck theory persists because it fits a compelling narrative. Unknown person in a vehicle near the property around the time of disappearance, Summer's scent tracked to the road. A vehicle could explain how a child vanished without a trace. It's clean, it's logical, it provides an answer. It's a theory. But without the truck, without the driver, without corroborating evidence, it remains just that, a theory, unsupported by proof. 2. Competing theories. From the beginning, investigators have pursued two primary theories about what happened to Summer. Theory 1. Abduction. Someone took Summer from the property. Theory 2. Summer wandered off and became lost in the wilderness. After 4 years, the TBI maintains both theories are equally viable. They refuse to commit to one over the other. Assistant Director Josh Melton stated in a public briefing, "We don't have the evidence in this case to know for sure whether Summer was taken or whether she walked away from her home and became lost. If we, as investigators, speculate and focus our efforts in one direction, we're making a huge mistake. This is responsible investigative practice. Don't narrow focus prematurely based on hunches or assumptions. Follow the evidence wherever it leads. Keep all possibilities open until evidence eliminates them." But here's the frustrating reality. The evidence isn't leading anywhere. It's not pointing toward abduction. It's not pointing toward wandering into the wilderness. It's not pointing anywhere at all. Evidence supporting abduction. The tracking dog that followed scent to the road suggests Summer left the property. The reported truck sighting provides a possible means of transportation. The fact that exhaustive searches of the surrounding wilderness found no trace suggests she's not in the woods. The 2-minute window is so tight it's hard to imagine her wandering far enough to evade searchers. Problems with abduction theory. No witnesses to an abduction. In that 2-minute window, no one saw anything. The timeline is incredibly tight. 2 minutes to grab a child and disappear. The location was isolated but visible. The house was visible from the camper. Would someone risk grabbing a child in view of others? No evidence of an intruder. No unknown DNA found in the house. No unknown fingerprints. No cell phone activity from unfamiliar numbers in the area. No one saw unfamiliar vehicles or people in the area that day. Evidence. Supporting lost in wilderness. 5-year-olds are impulsive and unpredictable. Summer could have decided to go outside through another door. The terrain is unforgiving. A child could fall, become injured, unable to call for help. Many missing children in wilderness areas are never found, even after extensive searches. Wild animals could account for lack of remains. Problems with wilderness theory. The timeline doesn't quite fit. 2 minutes isn't much time to get far. The exhaustive search found nothing. Not a shoe, not clothing, not a single trace. The scent trail led to the road, not deeper into the forest. Summer was described as obedient. She responded when her mother called. Why wouldn't she respond during the search when hundreds of people were calling her name? The weather was good. She wasn't properly equipped for wilderness survival, but she also didn't face immediate environmental dangers, like exposure. Both theories have significant holes. Both require believing something improbable. And after 4 years, investigators are still examining both, because neither has produced conclusive evidence. This is what makes the Summer Wells case outside the norm. In most cases, evidence points somewhere. Investigators can build a theory supported by facts. In Summer's case, there are theories but no supporting facts. Just an empty space where a little girl should be. Take a moment right now to hit that like button if you believe Summer deserves justice. Your engagement with this content directly impacts how many people see it, and someone watching might have the information that breaks this case wide open. To understand why this case has been so difficult to solve, we need to examine the unique obstacles investigators face. Each obstacle on its own would be challenging. Together, they create a nearly impossible investigative puzzle. Challenge 1. Minimal physical evidence. The Wells property was searched extensively. More than 11 documented searches over 4 years. They didn't search casually. They examined every inch with the intensity of investigators who believed evidence might be there. What did they find? Nothing conclusive. No evidence suggesting violence occurred in that house. No signs of struggle. No blood spatter. No disturbed areas suggesting something was buried. Specialized detection dogs did not alert to anything that led to discovery of evidence. These dogs are trained to detect human remains, even very old remains. They walked the property multiple times. They found nothing. The vehicles on the property were examined. Every vehicle was processed. If evidence was found, it hasn't been made public. There's no surveillance footage because the area has no cameras. No traffic cameras on rural roads. No business cameras because there are no businesses. No doorbell cameras because neighbors are acres away. The forensic absence is almost total. And in modern investigations, absence of evidence creates problems. Investigators are trained to follow evidence. Without evidence, where do you go? Challenge 2. Imprecise timeline. We know Summer was on the property in the late afternoon. We know she was reported missing at 6:30 in the evening, but the exact sequence of events in between is based on human memory, and memory is unreliable even under the best circumstances. Approximately 2 minutes could have been 1 minute or 5 minutes. Human perception of time under stress is notoriously inaccurate. Around 5:30 to 6 in the evening is a 30-minute window. That's a lot of time for things to happen. Without a precise timeline, investigators can't narrow possibilities effectively. They can't establish alibis. They can't correlate events. They're working with approximations and estimates. Challenge 3. Limited witnesses. No neighbors saw anything unusual that day. In rural areas with homes separated by acres of land, this isn't surprising. But it also means no independent corroboration. No one reported unfamiliar vehicles on the road that day. The red truck report came later, and its reliability is uncertain. No one heard anything. No screams, no calls for help, no sounds of struggle. The witnesses who exist are Summer's three brothers, who were watching videos and may not have been paying close attention to their sister. Their children, whose memories are naturally less reliable than adults, whose perception of time and events is still developing. Candace is a witness to some events, but she's also a potential subject of investigation, which complicates her role. Can she be both witness and suspect? Investigators must treat her statements carefully. Don was at work, so he's not a witness to the disappearance itself. He can only report what others told him. There are no independent witnesses who can corroborate or contradict the family's account. It's the family's word, and nothing else. Challenge 4. Rural location. The Wells property is in an area with spotty cell phone coverage, meaning cell tower data may be limited or unhelpful. Cell tower data can track phone locations, identify who was in an area, but if towers don't cover the area well, that data doesn't exist. There are no surveillance cameras anywhere in the area. Not on businesses, not on roads, not on neighboring properties. The surveillance net that covers urban and suburban America simply doesn't exist in rural Tennessee. The isolation that makes rural Tennessee appealing to people seeking peace and space makes it incredibly difficult to investigate incidents. In cities, someone always sees something. In rural areas, you can be invisible. Challenge 5. Information overload. 6,500 tips, most based on speculation rather than first-hand knowledge. Investigators have had to spend thousands of hours chasing leads that originated from online theories rather than actual evidence. Every tip requires follow-up. Every lead must be checked. The workload is enormous. This is actively harmful to the investigation. Resources spent on bad tips are resources not spent on real investigation. But investigators can't risk ignoring tips, because one might be legitimate. The forensic reality. Television has created unrealistic expectations about forensic science. On crime shows, every scene yields useful DNA. Every question has a scientific answer. Lab results come back in hours. Cases are solved in 42 minutes. Reality is different. Reality is frustrating. You need biological material to extract DNA from. If there's no material, no blood, no tissue, no hair with roots attached, there's no DNA to test. You can't DNA test a theory. Fingerprints in a home where multiple people live prove nothing unless they belong to an unknown person. Summer's fingerprints would be everywhere in her own home. Her parents' fingerprints would be everywhere. Her brother's fingerprints would be everywhere. That's normal. It's meaningless. Specialized detection dogs are remarkable tools, but they're not perfect. The fact they didn't locate Summer doesn't necessarily mean she's not somewhere in the area. It could mean conditions prevented them from finding her. Wind patterns, water, time, all affect dogs' abilities. The absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. It's just absence. On June 15, 2021, Summer Wells was known to perhaps a few hundred people in her community. Family, neighbors, people at the local store. A typical 5-year-old's social circle. By June 16th, when the Amber Alert was issued, millions knew her name. Within a week, Summer Wells had become a social media phenomenon. Not in the positive way that term usually suggests, but in a darker, more disturbing way. Online communities descended on the case like vultures. Theories proliferated across platforms: Facebook, YouTube, Reddit, TikTok. Accusations flew in comment sections. Amateur investigators convinced they could solve the case began analyzing every photo, every statement, every detail they could find. The search for Summer became a spectacle, a form of entertainment, content. Don and Candace Wells have never been charged with any offense related to Summer's disappearance. They've never been named as suspects by law enforcement. They passed polygraph examinations. They've cooperated with investigators, sitting for hours of questioning, providing access to their property and possessions. None of that mattered to the online response. Within weeks, Don and Candace were being accused in Facebook groups and YouTube videos. Groups with tens of thousands of members dissected every detail of their lives. Their criminal histories were examined and shared widely. Their home conditions were criticized. Their parenting was questioned. Their every word and gesture was analyzed. Body language analysts on video platforms declared them guilty based on eye movements and facial expressions and tone of voice. Never mind that body language analysis is not reliable science and isn't admissible in court. Never mind that trauma and stress can produce behaviors that might appear unusual to someone watching a screen. Never mind that professional investigators with actual training had examined Don and Candace and found insufficient evidence to charge them. The online court of opinion had rendered its verdict: guilty. The harassment escalated beyond online comments. Don described people appearing at his work sites to confront him, strangers making accusations in public, being recognized in stores and restaurants, being unable to live a normal life because everyone knew his face and believed they knew his guilt. The family eventually moved to Arkansas. Don said he was too recognizable in Tennessee. He couldn't find work because employers didn't want the association, the drama, the attention his presence would bring. Whether or not Don and Candace are responsible for anything, they deserve due process. They deserve to be presumed innocent unless proven otherwise. That's not just a nice ideal. That's a fundamental principle of justice. The problems social media created. 1. Generated thousands of unhelpful tips that wasted investigative resources. Tips based on watching videos, not witnessing events. 2. Created real-world harassment, regardless of actual guilt or innocence. The Wells family faced consequences without conviction. 3. Spread misinformation that confused public understanding of the case. Rumors became treated as facts. Repeated so many times people forgot they were unverified. 4. May have discouraged legitimate witnesses from coming forward. If someone saw something relevant but feared becoming the next target of online harassment, would they speak up? 5. Turned a missing child into content, into entertainment. Summer became a hashtag, a thumbnail, a way to generate views and engagement. Summer Wells became content. Her face appeared in countless video thumbnails, often with sensationalized titles. Her disappearance became a storyline, parsed and analyzed and discussed, not primarily out of concern for her well-being, but because it was interesting, because it generated engagement. And that's perhaps the most troubling aspect of the social media response to this case. The grifters. Perhaps most disturbing were those who exploited Summer's case for personal gain. Some content creators built entire channels around the case, uploading multiple videos per week, seeking profit from views and advertising revenue and donations. The TBI explicitly warned the public about individuals exploiting Summer's case. They cautioned against donating to unverified fundraisers, noting that multiple people were soliciting money while claiming it would help find Summer. A legitimate reward fund was established through proper channels and grew to approximately $73,750. But countless other donation requests circulated online, many of them questionable at best, outright scams at worst. People who had never met Summer, who had no connection to the case beyond watching videos, were asking strangers for money. Some claimed they were private investigators. Some claimed they were search teams. Some claimed they had special insight or information. The TBI investigated some of these individuals and found no legitimate connection to the case. They were simply opportunists exploiting a tragedy. Social media. Help or harm? We need to acknowledge that social media is a tool. Like any tool, it can be used for good or harm. A hammer can build a house or break a window. The tool itself is neutral. The use determines the impact. In missing children cases, social media can be powerful for good. It spreads information quickly, across vast distances. It keeps cases in public consciousness when traditional media moves on to the next story. Amber Alert systems integrated with social media have saved lives by reaching millions of people instantly. In Summer's case, social media kept her story from being forgotten. 4 years later, people are still discussing Summer Wells. Videos about her case still generate hundreds of thousands of views. That sustained attention has likely contributed to the investigation remaining active and resourced. So yes, social media helped keep Summer's name alive, but it also hurt in ways that are harder to quantify but no less real. The problem is that investigation requires expertise, training, resources, and access to information the public doesn't have. It requires following proper procedures and building cases that will hold up in court. It requires careful documentation and chain of custody and legal standards. Social media investigation has none of those things. What it has is speculation and emotion and the illusion of insight. When professional investigators make mistakes, there are serious consequences. Evidence can be thrown out. Cases can be dismissed. People can sue. Careers can end. When internet investigators make mistakes, they just move on to the next case. Delete their video or post. Offer a vague apology. Start analyzing someone else's tragedy. The stakes are not the same. The responsibility is not the same. And that asymmetry creates real harm. As of December 2025, the Amber Alert for Summer Wells remains active. This is extraordinary. Amber Alerts are typically concluded within days, sometimes within hours. They're designed for immediate crisis response, not long-term missing person cases. Summer's Alert has been active for more than 4 years. It's the longest-running Amber Alert in Tennessee history. It may be one of the longest-running Amber Alerts in the nation. Practically, this means Summer's information remains in law enforcement databases nationwide. Her description is still being circulated. Every law enforcement agency in the country has access to her case file. If someone is arrested for an unrelated matter and mentions something about Summer, there's a flag in the system. But let's be realistic about what this means 4 years later. Summer would not look like she did at 5 years old. Children change dramatically between 5 and 9 years old. They lose baby features. Their faces thin out. They grow taller. Hair darkens or lightens. The little girl in the photographs, from 2021, would not be recognizable if seen today. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has created age progression images showing what Summer might look like now at age 9. These images are created by forensic artists who understand how children's faces change, who use algorithms and experience to project forward in time. These images are distributed to law enforcement agencies, schools, medical facilities, and social services agencies nationwide. They're shared on social media and posted on missing children websites. They're sent to border crossings and international law enforcement. The hope is that someone, somewhere, will see this image and recognize a child they know. A teacher who has a student who matches the description. A doctor who sees a patient. A social worker who encounters a child. Anyone who might have contact with Summer if she's still alive. But we need to be honest about probability. Most experts in missing children cases believe that if Summer were alive and being held somewhere, we would have found her by now. 4 years is a long time to keep a kidnapped child hidden, especially in the age of facial recognition and social media and constant surveillance. The brutal statistical reality is that most abducted children who will be found alive are found within the first 72 hours. After that, the odds drop dramatically with each passing day. 4 years later, hope for Summer's safe return has faded significantly. Not disappeared. Hope never fully disappears for families of missing children, but faded to something small and fragile, kept alive through sheer force of will rather than realistic probability. The family now, the Wells family, left Tennessee for Arkansas, seeking anonymity in a place where their faces weren't recognized, where their name didn't immediately trigger reactions. Don Wells has given occasional interviews, usually around anniversaries of Summer's disappearance. He maintains the same position year after year. Summer was taken, someone carried her away, and he believes someone knows what happened. He believes in his heart that there's a person out there with information who hasn't come forward. Candace Bly has largely disappeared from public view, declining interview requests and stating through representatives that she still experiences ongoing difficulties related to Summer's disappearance and the years of scrutiny that followed. The trauma, the accusations, The constant questioning it has taken a toll that's difficult to quantify. The three brothers are no longer with Don and Candace. After removal by Tennessee Department of Children's Services in July 2021 and 3 years in state care, Don and Candace signed over parental rights permanently in 2024. The family that existed on June 14, 2021, Don, Candace, 3 boys, and Summer no longer exists. It fractured completely. In June 2025, Don announced that the Child Services case had been dismissed, with findings deemed unsubstantiated. Whatever allegations or concerns prompted the removal of the boys, they were not proven in court. The documentation showed unsubstantiated findings. What this means depends on interpretation. To Don and Candace's supporters, it means vindication. The state investigated thoroughly and found nothing. To critics, it means the state couldn't prove allegations, which is different from disproving them. The investigation today. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation maintains that Summer's case is active and ongoing. They say this in every public statement, at every press conference, in every media interview. What does that mean in December 2025? 4.5 years after Summer vanished. It means agents are available to follow up on credible tips. If someone calls with information, investigators will respond. If new evidence emerges, if someone comes forward, if remains are discovered anywhere that might be Summer, investigators are ready to act immediately. But it's not the intensive daily investigation it was in June 2021. It can't be. Resources are finite. Investigators work multiple cases. Agencies have budgets and personnel limitations. A case that's generated no new substantive leads in years can't command the same resources as active investigations with fresh evidence. Assistant Director Josh Melton has stated publicly, "We're not going to allow this case to sit on a shelf. We are committed to bringing Summer home, and we're going to keep working on this case until she is home." Those words matter. They're a commitment from the highest levels of the TBI. This case will not be forgotten. It will not be filed away. It will remain open until it's solved. The November 2024 property search demonstrates the investigation is genuinely active. That operation happened 3.5 years after Summer disappeared. That wasn't for show. That wasn't to placate the public. That was real investigative work, prompted by real leads that investigators deemed credible enough to warrant multi-agency coordination and search warrants. That should provide some measure of hope. Not hope that Summer is alive necessarily, the statistical realities make that unlikely, but hope that someday, somehow, answers will emerge, that the truth will come to light, that Summer will be found, even if she can't be brought home alive. Cold cases are solved decades later. Bodies are discovered years after disappearance. Someone's conscience finally breaks, and they come forward. A deathbed confession reveals long-held secrets. New technology allows old evidence to be examined in new ways. It happens. Not often, but it happens. Summer's case can still be solved. In all the discussion of investigations and theories, in all the examination of evidence and timelines and suspects, it's easy to lose sight of the most important fact. Summer Wells was a real child. Not a case number. Not a hashtag. Not content for videos. Not a mystery to be solved for entertainment. A real little girl who loved planting flowers with her mother, who had blonde hair that caught the sunlight and made it glow, who had blue eyes that sparkled with the particular kind of joy that 5-year-olds possess, who answered when her mother called, until the day she didn't. Summer was 5 years old when she disappeared. If she's still alive somewhere, she should be 9 now. She should be in 4th grade, learning multiplication tables and writing stories and developing her own personality and interests. She should be complaining about homework and asking for new toys and having opinions about music and movies. Instead, she's frozen in time, forever 5 years old, forever in that pink shirt and gray shorts, forever the little girl in those photographs from June 2021, forever the little girl who walked through a kitchen door and vanished. The age progression photo shows what Summer might look like at 9 years old. Forensic artists created it with care and expertise. But it's just a projection, an educated guess. We don't know what she would really look like. We don't know what her voice sounds like now, whether she still has that little kid voice or whether it's started to change. We don't know what makes her laugh, what she's interested in, what she dreams about. We don't know if she's even alive to have those experiences. And that's the heartbreak at the center of this case. The not knowing. The terrible uncertainty that prevents closure and healing and moving forward. What can still be done? The most important thing is continued vigilance. Summer's case needs to remain in public consciousness, not as entertainment, not as content, but as an unsolved disappearance that demands resolution. The reward fund of $73,750 remains available for information leading to Summer's location. That's substantial money. For someone with information, it could be life-changing. Law enforcement should continue periodic reviews of the case file. Sometimes, fresh eyes spot things that were missed. Sometimes, connections that weren't apparent years ago become clear with distance and perspective. Advances in forensic technology should be monitored. DNA analysis techniques that didn't exist in 2021 might make old evidence useful. Geographic profiling methods improve. Computer algorithms for analyzing patterns get more sophisticated. Connections to other cases should be explored. Is there a pattern of missing children in the region? Are there individuals with histories of child abduction who were in the area? Sometimes cases are connected in ways that aren't immediately apparent. But perhaps most important, don't give up. Don't let Summer become just another missing child whose name fades from memory. Many cases have been solved decades after the incident. Sometimes it takes 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. But truth has a way of emerging. Secrets have a way of being revealed. People who thought they'd never be caught get caught. Evidence that seemed lost gets found. Summer's case can still be solved. It will require someone coming forward with information they've kept hidden, or remains being discovered by hikers or hunters or construction workers, or a connection being made between Summer's disappearance and something else. But it's possible. Justice delayed is still justice. Answers decades later are still answers. The question that haunts us: what happened to Summer Wells in those 2 minutes between the kitchen door and her mother's return? Did she walk outside into the woods through a door no one was watching? Did she become disoriented in the dense forest? Did she fall and injure herself, unable to call for help? Did the wilderness claim her, leaving no trace for searchers to find? Did someone take her in a window of opportunity so brief it seems almost impossible? Was someone watching the house, waiting? Did they grab her and carry her to a waiting vehicle? Did they drive away while her mother was helping her grandmother with a knee brace? Did something happen inside that house that no one is acknowledging? Is there a secret being kept by the only witnesses, 3 boys who were watching videos and may not have seen what really happened? Or is the truth something else entirely? Something we haven't considered? Something outside all the theories and speculation? 4 years later, we still don't know. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation doesn't know. The FBI doesn't know. The 120 agencies that participated in the search don't know. And Don and Candace Wells claim they don't know. What we do know is this. On June 15, 2021, Summer Moon Utah Wells was at her home on Ben Hill Road in Hawkins County, Tennessee. She was planting flowers with her mother and grandmother, getting her small hands dirty in the soil, enjoying a warm summer afternoon. She went inside to see her brothers, pulling open the kitchen door and stepping into the house where she should have been safe. And then, she was gone. 3,000 acres searched by 1,150 personnel, 6,500 tips received from concerned citizens, 170 interviews conducted with anyone who might have information, 11 property searches executed with forensic teams and specialized dogs, 4 years of intensive investigation consuming countless hours and resources. And still, Summer remains missing, not found, not home, not safe. Just gone. This is the story of Summer Wells, a 5-year-old girl who disappeared from her home on a Tuesday afternoon in June 2021. This is the story of an investigation that has followed every lead, pursued every theory, checked every tip, and still hasn't found her. This is the story of a family fractured by tragedy and scrutiny, torn apart by loss and accusation. This is the story of social media's power and its dangers, its ability to help and to harm, often simultaneously. This is the story of rural America's isolation and the challenges that creates for law enforcement and investigation. But most of all, this is the story of a little girl named Summer Moon Utah Wells, who should be 9 years old now, who should be safe, who should be living the ordinary, precious life of childhood, going to school, playing with friends, experiencing the world, growing up, and isn't. A call to action. The Amber Alert remains active after 4 years. The investigation remains open. The hope for answers remains alive, even as hope for Summer's safe return has dimmed to something small and fragile. Somewhere, somehow, someone knows what happened on Ben Hill Road on June 15, 2021. Maybe that someone is watching this now, listening to these words, carrying the weight of that knowledge like a stone in their chest. Maybe they've kept silent out of fear of consequences, fear of involvement, fear of what speaking up would mean for their life. Maybe they've told themselves that their information isn't important, that it couldn't possibly matter, that surely investigators already know whatever they know. Maybe they've convinced themselves that staying silent is the right choice, the safe choice, the smart choice. But it's not. If you have any information about Summer's disappearance, any detail, any observation, any knowledge, however small it might seem, please contact the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation or the Hawkins County Sheriff's Office. You can call the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation at 1-800-TBIFIND. That's 1-800-824-3463. You can call the Hawkins County Sheriff's Office at area code 423-272-7121. You can submit tips anonymously if you're concerned about identification. You can call from a phone that can't be traced back to you. You can have someone else call on your behalf. What matters is that the information reaches investigators. That's all. Just get the information to people who can act on it. Summer deserves to be found. Her family deserves answers, even if those answers are painful. And justice deserves to be served, whatever that justice looks like. 4 years is long enough to carry secrets. 4 years is long enough to wonder what happened. 4 years is long enough to hope and search and investigate and come up with nothing. It's time to bring Summer home, whether that means bringing her home alive, which seems increasingly unlikely, or bringing her remains home so she can be laid to rest with dignity, and her family can have closure either way. She deserves to come home. This is The Untold Cold Case, where we examine the cases that refuse to be forgotten, where we shine light on mysteries that demand resolution, where we give voice to victims who can no longer speak for themselves. If you believe in justice for Summer, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that notification bell so you're alerted when we post new content. Share this video with everyone you know, post it on your social media, send it to friends. Make sure as many people as possible hear Summer's story. Leave a comment about what you think should happen next in this investigation. Share your thoughts based on facts, not speculation. Discuss what law enforcement should do, what resources should be devoted, what approaches might yield results. Summer Wells deserves to be found, and together, we can keep her story alive until that day comes. We can make sure she's not forgotten. We can make sure her case remains a priority. We can make sure that whoever has information knows that people are still looking, still caring, still demanding answers. 4 years after, Summer walked through that kitchen door and vanished. The question remains, what happened to Summer Wells? Until that question is answered, we keep searching. We keep asking. We keep remembering. Until next time, keep seeking the truth. Keep fighting for justice. Keep remembering that behind every case is a real person who deserves resolution. Remember Summer Moon Utah Wells. Remember that she was 5 years old. Remember that she loved planting flowers. Remember that she had blonde hair and blue eyes. and a life ahead of her. And remember that somewhere, someone knows what happened. Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. 1-800-TBIFIND. That's 1-800-824-3463. Hawkins County Sheriff's Office. Area code 423-272-712-1. If you have information about Summer Wells, please contact law enforcement immediately. Tips can be submitted anonymously. No piece of information is too small. What seems insignificant to you might be the key that unlocks this entire case. This presentation is for educational and awareness purposes. All individuals discussed are presumed innocent unless proven guilty in a court of law. No accusations are being made against any individual. We are simply presenting publicly available information about this ongoing investigation with the goal of keeping Summer's case in the public consciousness and encouraging anyone with information to come forward to law enforcement. The goal is not to entertain, not to speculate wildly, not to accuse innocent people, but to remember a missing child and to advocate for justice and resolution. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the Untold Cold Case. Your engagement helps keep cases like Summer's in the public eye. Every view, every share, every comment increases the chances that someone with information will see this and finally come forward. Summer Wells has been missing for 4 years. That's 1,460 days. That's 35,040 hours. That's 2,102,400 minutes. Every single one of those minutes, someone, somewhere, has known what happened. It's time for that someone to speak. It's time to bring Summer home. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring. And thank you for helping keep Summer's memory alive. Subscribe for more cold case stories like this one.